Alright, being 5:15, I'd like to call the finance and personnel meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has the attendance been noted? Are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
There are not.
The motion to adopt the agenda? Move. Second. Motion been made by Bob, seconded by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. For approval of the May 8th meeting minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Motion been made by Tim, seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment? Presentation of the Edward Jones investment. Judy?
All right, so with us tonight, we have Lund and Corey, and they are both, title investment advisors, financial advisors, with Edward Jones. And the city has had a portfolio, with them for a number of years. And tonight we'd like to discuss that portfolio, and possibly look at an option of putting some dollars and or taking some dollars from that portfolio and helping within our capital projects budget. As you know, when we started taking expenditures and revenues at the end of each year and trying to utilize those dollars within our capital budget and move those additional revenues or any expenditures that were saved into those capital dollars, we had a discussion about what that was going to look like and whether the finance committee was on board with going through those processes. So tonight we have another alternative to look at for bringing some dollars forward into our capital projects budget. And that is with our investment with Edward Jones. So I guess first I'd like you to start with probably what that portfolio looks like today. You guys want to go through the dollar amount. It is at $2 million currently, and they're going to show you how that portfolio has changed over time, at least within the last 10 years. And this portfolio actually started before I was the finance director here at the city, and we've been managing this portfolio for the last
35 since
35 years. And it has been invested in that for that entire time, but we want to take a look at kind of thinking outside the box and utilizing these funds as they have grown over time. We feel like this is a good time for us to take a look at that and possibly put some dollars in our capital projects budget.
Deal. Can we go to slide
Judy,
number two?
You can give them the keyboard and then the keyboard and then you can go up and down.
That one's good.
Okay.
Thank you for having us in. Lund Cooley with Edward Jones. My office is across the river, and Corey Kinneful, his office is over by Pfeiffer Park. We've got some of the city's money invested in a portfolio of mutual funds. Some is managed by a group called the American Funds. They've been managing money since 1935. And then a couple funds is managed by Columbia, who's also been managing money over 50 years. This chart tracks the performance of the funds, the city's account value going back a little over 10 years. So back in January 1 of 2013, it was worth around $685,000, and our growth the past 11 years has been $1.4 million. So we're currently sitting around $2,086,000 in the portfolio. The 10-year rate of return has been 10.25. Corey's going to get into like asset allocation or how the money's actually invested for the most part, but our objectives were conservative growth and what's called growth and income, just utilizing larger company stock funds and some balanced funds, which are part stocks, part bonds. That return number is after all expenses are out of there, so the portfolio probably made close to 11%, and your net return's been 10.25. You're paying what's called management fees. Part goes to American funds, part goes to Edward Jones, part goes to the advisors on the account. Those average out to be about 0.65% a year. So our fees are kind of built into this. They're not billed separately. They're just deducted from the performance. Account goes all the way back to 1990, about when I got started in town. Just had an account with the city through previous treasurer would be Jim Julius, yes. So it goes back a ways. We try to do annual reviews with Judy and keep tabs on how the individual funds are doing. Get some flow back and forth. Some of our clients just let things keep growing until they pass away, and they're like, what good did the money do you? Not very much. It just kept growing. So Judy's gonna address, getting some utilization. Is that fair? Out of the account. Corey, I'll turn it over to you if you want to get into asset allocation.
Now, as far as the funds and how we're invested, as London mentioned, we have balanced funds and what I would call dividend paying stock funds. So, we're fairly conservative as far as the allocation. And what we try to do is, as we, draw this money down and spend it, is get to a more conservative balance with the money. Probably we're about a 75-25 mix between those stocks and bonds, bringing that down closer to a 60-40, 50-50 mix over time, just to get more conservative, because now we're switching gears. We're not trying to grow this money. We're trying to take money out and kind of keep it level. And speaking with Judy, that amount is typically, if we can keep it around 5 to 6% of the total investment, you're typically not going to see the principal get eaten into by doing that. So we could be looking at $100,000 to $150,000 a year, and that's not something that would deplete that investment. So that would be the plan moving forward, would be to start drawing that amount, tapping into the growth, and getting to a little bit more conservative, because we've had all this growth, and that's why we now have this allocation. So now we can shift gears a bit and draw that money down. There are some other, there's some other information in here that goes over the investments that we have. They give you an idea of how they're invested, how they performed, and what we're working with. And, we're working with funds that have a history of performing through up and down markets because of the conservative approach that we've taken. And that's not going to change either.
So when we were considering looking at the budget from year to year, I'm going to go back to that example. We decided that we have a very solid fund balance. So we're, about 3 million, give or take $100,000. And our purpose of taking additional revenues from year to year and any savings we have in our expenditure side is, you get to the point where you have a solid unassigned fund balance. And why does it make sense to continue to tax people at the same tax rate if you're not utilizing the funds you have from year to year? So let's not continue to build the unassigned fund balance, but start to utilize the dollars. Now, would we want to go anywhere underneath $3 million? I mean, I feel like that's a fair number. Our auditors often say that's a good number to be at, especially now that we receive more in shared revenue. We're about at the dollar amount that we see in shared revenue from year to year. So it's a real solid number, around $3 million that we're sitting on. So when I sat down with Edward Jones and I'm looking at this investment, one of the things I was considering is, okay, we went through that thought process of utilizing those dollars. I said to them, what would happen if we took 5% of this portfolio from year to year And we pulled those dollars out, and I was able to utilize those within my capital budget. That's where those funds would be utilized. Since we have a 10% return and we're utilizing 5% of the portfolio, you're not gonna see a reduction in the portfolio. You're gonna stay, you know, $2,100,000. It will still continue to climb over time. Now you're gonna have ebbs and flows. Anyone who has an investment portfolio understands you have to let the market go up and down. You don't start pulling things out like crazy when the market goes down. You have to ride these things out. We wrote it out for a very long time, and it's done a great job over the last 35 years, getting us to the position we're in today. But because we've done that, we should, I think, take advantage of what we have here and start to utilize some of those funds from year to year. Now, how that would happen is we would allow Corey to decide what that would look like, and he would over time, and depending on what you guys want to do moving forward in the next, you know, before December, he would pick when he thought, based on the history of the portfolio and other things that he knows that I don't know, and he would make an educated decision on when he would pull those dollars out. And then he would let them sit in the money market and gain 5% interest until next year. And I would say, okay, it's January now, I can take that revenue in. We would have budgeted for an additional $100,000 in our 2025 budget process. And then we would take those dollars in 2025 as a revenue. I can have that its own line item. And again, like Corey said, it's not perfect 100,000. It's going to be around $100,000. Any investment portfolio is nothing's in round numbers. It's always up and down, and that can be a day, you know, hours. So that is what we are looking at, thinking about doing with this portfolio. So I want to, because this is a change in how things are done, I think it's very important that you guys are informed. I have also had a conversation with our auditors, and all this information is found within our audit. Just so you know, I brought that along. And this is not outside our investment, the state statute. So the state of Wisconsin tells the city of Newland and all municipalities, townships, you know, governing bodies, how we can invest our dollars. If the auditors thought that this was outside of what we could do, or they were red flags about what we were doing with these dollars, just in case you have a question about that, they would have told, you know, he would have said, you know, you shouldn't be investing in this, that, and the other thing. So I did have a conversation with him about us utilizing 5%. And he said, when I see endowments, you know, endowment like funding, we usually see about half of those portfolios being pulled out when you hit these kinds of numbers, and it makes sense to utilize those dollars. So I said to him, when you present your budget or the audit in August, and somebody says, hey, did you hear about that money that we're going to be taking? He doesn't get slapped upside the face by, you know, you guys asking him a question about that. And I want him to know what's happening in the city, and that he's also on board with it. So I guess with that, I think I'm at a point where I mean, I think it's a great opportunity for us. We have been doing some short-term loans with First State Bank. This should allow us to not do that, as when I would like to step back from having to go through that process from year to year, and then just utilize our own funding to help us through the additional dollars in capital. Do I think we're going to have more than $500,000 like we always do every year in capital? I can't tell you that today. I can only tell you that once I get all the revenue numbers in. Will it help us immensely? Yes, it will. That's a lot of money into when you're talking about $500,000 in the capital budget, and we're pulling in $120,000 into that. It definitely will allow us not to we're using on a side balance, we're using a little bit of this to make ends meet and that, and it's just how the processes work. So I think it will help open up and allow some flexibility within that budget coming up for the next 5 years or so, and then we'll see what happens, in 5 years, and maybe we'll shift gears. And again, at any time, if we decide this is something we don't want to do anymore, and we just, things don't look like we anticipated, we can always step back and say, we're not doing this anymore. So don't sell the, bonds or stocks, or we're just gonna leave it, move forward as part of our portfolio. So that is what's on the table tonight, and I guess at this point I'd open it up for questions, of myself or Edward Jones about what we're actually thinking. I know I did have, a question about unassigned fund balance. So where did this money come from originally, if I should say that? And yes, it did come from unassigned fund balance. And does this portfolio affect unassigned fund balance? Yes, it does, because as it goes up and down, we have to book fair market value. So we have been booking, and it has been affecting unassigned fund balance forever. It's just that when I do the revenue and expenditures and we take those dollars to put into capital, it's before the portfolio. I never book the portfolio before we talk about the solid dollars that come from outside of the portfolio into the funds. So we do that separate from that. This by itself affects fund balance depending on market value. But remember, we're still adding 5% over time to the portfolio. So you're gonna continue to see ebbs and flows, but over time, should continue to see that portfolio increase. If that makes sense.
I'm assuming you guys have low risk, your investments that you're making for us.
So we're driving 60 miles an hour in a 55 zone. It's not bank type assets, but it's professionally managed. It's diversified. We're not using aggressive funds that are like 80% in tech or anything like that. It's mostly large cap dividend oriented. So it's driving fairly conservative, and the plan would be to move it a little more conservative by taking that money out and that we're going to be utilizing in the next 12 months and having it in a money market. So then we don't have to sell if the market happens to be down and we need the money then. It's kind of set aside. So good question. And I usually tell people it's going to be down 1 out of every 5 years, and there's no way around that. We went through COVID on that chart, and then a very poor year for both stocks and bonds in 2022. But historically, as long as you're patient and we have good managers, we'll be able to roll through that. There's no charges when we pull money out because it's a city account. There's no taxes, whereas if it was an individual or a retirement account, something you're paying taxes as the money comes out of there. So there's no concerns in that regard. It's not like we're annuitizing it or setting up a stream of income. This is still a very flexible type of plan. And we've made 10. If we can't quote anything or guarantee anything going forward, but even if it's 6-7% and only drawn 5, we're still going to stay ahead of the game over time.
When you started that in 1990, what was the fund balance when you started this account? Do you know?
There were a couple of like bonds in the account, and then one mutual fund called Washington Mutual, and it was like $25,000. So I think the whole account was around 100,000 going back to my notes from 91. Just to bump into Mr. Vilius out on his walks. He's a big walker.
He could probably tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have any other investments like this out there?
We do have one for the wastewater treatment plant. So we have what's called Ziegler Asset Management. Jim also started that fund before I sat in this position. And that one sits out there, I think at about 1.2 million, and that's all mostly bonds.
I just wondering if there was like, do we want
And
to
that's it.
start another one for 35 years from now or something like that? You know what I'm saying? Is there any a plan of investing in the future like this? I mean, I never heard of this. I didn't know we had this at the city, so I think it's a great idea and it's awesome. Now you're in a position to reap the benefits. So
Right.
That's what you're saying. So
I
it
guess
wouldn't
I
hurt
don't
to
know.
start another one.
I would probably take the
So-
time to sit down with Corey and talk about, have a discussion like, okay, what does that look like? I mean, we're in a really good position. We sit on like I said, $3 million. So we can't tie up too much. We've gotten this to a point where it is 2/3 of our unassigned fund balance. So we have to be really careful about that, because remember, most of our money sits in cash. And we get a high rate of interest for cash. We get as much as people get for CDs in cash. We have two places we put most of our cash, and that's First State Bank and the local government property insurance fund, because First State Bank matches the local government property insurance fund. And they move with the, yeah, so they're at like 5 point something. It's been moving up and down every month. But we do get a nice rate of return on cash. And we have to be ready to pay our bills, as you know, they're quite large. So that would be part of my concern about that. But I mean, Corey and I can have a discussion about, $25,000 and, putting that away and maybe something else. So, 30 years
Put it
down.
away and forget about it.
Right. So that's basically what, I mean, we didn't forget about it. We definitely knew
No.
that. Because a lot of them call me, I think we need to do something with this, and I trusted in what he was saying to me. He made changes and did I think a great job, moving this portfolio up over time. So, and now I've been thinking about this for a couple of years, and I bet you it's been in the back of your mind too. I've been thinking ever since it hit 2 million, I'm like, okay, I should really be considering, I think we should really be considering utilizing some of these funds, just not to keep it here, to build over time. It's kind of like I was talking in our philosophy as a group is, don't tax unless you're gonna, we're gonna use the money and people are gonna reap the benefits within their lifetime. You don't want to keep taking money from taxpayers when they're never going to see the new road or the new this or the new that. That's not fair. They pay for those things and they want to look at them too.
So at the end of the year, you've been putting money into capital. This would replace that? I mean, or
We go above and
what
beyond,
would you
like,
be doing on top of it?
Right. So as you know, our operational budget every year continues to grow. And we have a lot of pressures, and electric is on the news every day now, and people are even super concerned, citizens, about how they're even gonna make it from, the bill they had last week to the bill they're gonna have, that's going up 8 in double digits, 10%. We are not outside of that as a city. So we're gonna see that, gasoline, all those things. And on the other side, do not have the ability to tax. We get net new construction at $24,000 a year. So we have all of these huge pressures. So my goal has always been 500,000. How am I gonna squeeze this budget so we can get 500,000? And then when we squeeze the budget at the end of the year and we have savings and extra revenue, again, we're pushing everything into capital. So I feel as a city, we're being really prudent in utilizing those dollars and moving forward, but I can't promise, looking at the budget. Will I try to put more in capital? Would I love to? Yes. But until I see, what our salary is gonna do, Chad and I are just starting to have budget conversations now, talking about like, where are people at? You have to do all that research. Insurance is coming up, health insurance. I reached out to them and I'll be working on what is that gonna look like? So there's just a lot of unknowns right now. I wish I could take this and say, we're gonna do $500,000 or 6 and add to the 100,000, add 100,000, but our economy and everything is just so fluid right now that it's really difficult for me to say that.
We talked about today, property insurance expecting to go up, ambulance is going up, all
Yeah,
things are going up, so.
property insurance went up $10,000. I just got that back in. Now we're going through it. So we also do our due diligence to go through those policies and make sure things are, coming off and going on. We want to be really sure that things are coming on, but you don't want to pay for things that we've sold. Property insurance is a different animal when it comes to the municipality. We don't add and subtract in dollars all year. You can add something and not pay, but then you pay the next year for that item. And we did have a big asset come on, so that was part of why it went up. But yeah, that's $10,000 all by itself. So I see those kind of things and then I'm thinking, okay, where's my revenue coming in? We should see, the first estimates here are 2.3% increase to shared revenue going into next year. So for us, that's 2 million, 2.3, 20, 40, 50,000 more than we've seen before. So we're talking 50,000 plus, whatever net new construction is, it's more. I know people, it's not a lot to our budget, but it helps. I'm hoping I will see an increase in highway aids as we continue to, put our dollars into that infrastructure and continue to spend dollars on our roads, because as we spend money on highway aids, then those aids go up over time. They did talk about an increase in highway aids also, at least overall increase in dollars and cents from year to year in this biennium budget. So just a lot of research to do in the next couple months to know exactly where that budget's gonna come in. You
Just to make,
got a lot of conservative budgeters in this city. I don't even think how, your department heads at this city, our chief of police, I think it's such a great team effort. I look forward to the budget process each year and to sit down with these department heads and prioritize, because they are definitely willing to give up in departments to give to other departments when that need arises. So, there is not a lot of fat in our budget, and I'm a little worried that because we're getting so good at this, that, and the next time I try to put money within the capital budget, there's not gonna be much left because we've done such a good job, budgeting from year to year, but yep, that process is just starting. See how it works out as we go through time.
Judy, you were talking about the unassigned fund balance and just to make the point of having a fiscally responsible fund balance when we talk about bond rating and our
Mhm.
bonding.
Correct. So when we do go out to bonding, which we will again next year, we have Oshkosh Street on the docket. We have some grant funding coming in for that, and we'll be utilizing some of that grant funding and going back to bonding. And when I sit down with the bonding, the rating company Moody's, there it is. Their question always is, what is your fund balance at? And your rates are affected by that. They want to make sure, obviously, that you can pay your debt. And when we look at paying our bills, I always bring up debt service first, because I always feel like, just like in your household, that mortgage has got to be paid first. And it usually is one of the largest bills that you have to pay. So, yeah, when I sit through those rating calls with Moody's, a lot of the information that I'm sharing with you tonight is very much important to them too. And one of the things that they very much look at is that we're not continually rising it for no reason. If there's an up or a down, you can explain that, but they also don't want it to drop. That's really where they're going to say, okay, how come your unassigned fund balance isn't dropping? You want to be able to make sure that you can pay at least a year of that debt service before things will go haywire. Yeah, they think we have a very healthy unassigned fund balance.
I think it all sounds good. I think as long as we could make sure we think some right off the top for our streets, put it into the roads, capital projects.
And I think that's where we've been.
I mean, we look at the wheel tax all the time, so, and people look at that. So I think it's important to take some of this and stick it into the same thing with the wheel tax. It's gonna make people feel a lot better.
Looking at that graph makes me wish I would have stopped and seen Mr. Cooley at a 1991 when I graduated.
We just come for reviews when things look really good.
That is an exceptional return. That is,
Pretty sure if I had that, I would be here.
kind of makes my day just seeing that. Well done.
So what motion are we looking for?
I'm just wondering if maybe just
Are you looking for a motion to recommend to council?
yes.
I make a motion that we direct Finance Director Radke to work with our investment advisors, financial advisors, to proceed as discussed to utilize some of the gains from our investment fund with what Cooley Financial Advisors.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by John, seconded by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Monthly financial reports. Judy? Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for your service.
And Laura.
Yes.
I could have took the $100,000 to take care of college.
Expenditures, so, yeah. Thank you, Chad. We are at April. So if we're looking at percentages, we should be at about 33%. And when I look at the schedule, we're running on track, but one of the things I did talk about is how tight we are budgeting, and you can see we're running 30. Most departments are running 30, so we are right underneath, where we would anticipate those departments to be at. So things are looking good. And, our equipment replacement, I think I say this every month, but it's not a bad reminder. We do have some, unassigned fund balance dollars within there that, and I think I talked about it up here. Equipment replacement, we have $807,000. So that's some of those dollars that were moved from one year to the next to help with those capital projects dollars. So it will run over budget by the end of the year. We anticipate that. Debt service, we have most of that debt service paid for by this time of the year, just a small, payment left. In fact, I think I just made that last one the other day. And otherwise I don't see anything out of the ordinary right now within our expenditure side or on our expenditure side. Any questions on anything? Go to the revenues. And on the revenue side, we're also where I would anticipate us to be. We collected half of our highway aids. We got 2 more payments left. So we'll get that in full. Looks like maybe just a little bit more than what we anticipated, not too much, but, and then our interest. So this is another area I am watching, and I need to do, what is 25 gonna look like? Maybe I can add even here, conservatively, obviously, because the biggest concern I have when I add to this line item right here is that you won't have it the next year and I have to come back down. So, but I'll conservatively looked at adding to that because we're already at 76% and we're only in April. So, but the other positive side to that is if we go over it, we're gonna put it in our capital. So we know next year anything, and any additional dollars in there. Capital. Questions on any of the revenue? Then we go to assigned and unassigned fund balance, and this is, we talked a lot about unassigned fund balance tonight. And down at the bottom here, so I always say about 3 million. You can see shared revenue is just 2.6. So that's the comparison I was making earlier in the conversation about being close to where shared revenue is today. Our policy says 25%, but we're $1 million over that. I prefer to be closer to the shared revenue dollar amount, and so does the rating agency, Moody's. There is no change otherwise in any of our designated funds. Here's that list of projects that we carry forward and we anticipate to go over in the capital side. That's why it goes over to, we have all of these things we carried that we couldn't get done in previous years. Then we have the wheel tax report, and we have a number of things we're going to utilize these dollars for this year. some in the downtown, the engineering for house and Alcan Road, and then North Street because we received that grant. So, and then the bonding schedule, so the bond that we took out last year, we are at TID 5 years, so that's the downtown project. East Ridge, that is completed and came in under budget. The ADA was a little bit over, our Caterpillar was a little bit over, but the difference is gonna be paid for by the sale of the Caterpillar. The fire department equipment, part of it here and part on the capital side. And then items we have not started yet. The House Road is actually being charged to wheel tax now. And then, once it happens, that'll come out of here. That's where we're at with that. Then this is the sanitary sewer downtown. Our sewer fund funded the downtown sanitary sewer. The total project cost was 1.2. We anticipated 1. But we have assessments coming back in at 373, so we're actually under budget here and would expect. So when I do my TID annual reports, I show this revenue coming in, but I only show it as net. So I only put money over in the TID district for what they actually need, sanitary sewer, not the special assessment part, which I hope to bring to you next month. I'm working on those right now. I have the TID reports that are due to the state by the end of the month. And then I think I'll bring those in and talk to you guys about where they're at financially also. All right. And we'll move on to what have I been doing? So the annual financial report was due to the state of Wisconsin by May 15th. So I call this the tax collection, the annual tax returns, kind of like our individual tax return. So I report all the revenue expenditures for the city for last year, and I have to wait until I get at least a preliminary audit. So I'm making sure that all of those things tie together. So that they use this report to calculate shared revenue and highway aids. Working with the auditors to get that draft audit complete so I can do the MD&A. I'm hoping to do that yet this month because I'm going to lose Missy out for a little bit, and she helps me with at least the computer side of it. She set up a program for me. So we'll get far enough at least so that I can go in and make changes if I need to. So I want to get started on that. Again, here's the TID report. So we got 4, 5, and 6. So then I need to set up meetings with the taxing jurisdictions, and I'll have all those meetings before the end of the month, and then I think I'll provide those to the finance committee next month and show you where the TID districts are at, like I said, financially sitting. Every year we have to do the annual financial report for the wastewater treatment plant, so I have a portion of that I complete. I attended a meeting for the maintenance of effort reporting. This was a big report that had to be put out it was in addition this year from Act 12. So I had to show that we're spending the same amount of money or more. There's a number of criteria that have to be met. There's 4 of them actually. And I had to report to the state before the end of the month. And the penalty is big. It's 15% of our shared revenue. So I have already done that. That was, and it was new to me. So I wanted to get on top of it. And like I said, I went to some meetings and then I had to send information to the townships that we go to that are part of our fire department contract. And I had information I had to send to them. And then because it was new, I did it wrong the first time. So then I had to do it again. And so I got that done, and I'll get that back out to them tomorrow. But that's why I always think it's good to do it, and especially when it's your first time, to get it done early. So in case you make a mistake, you can go back and correct it. So I began communication on a new TED district. So we're working through that. I tend to be at Durham's. I had a board meeting with Civic, and that was in person. Started talking about their budget process, and then put together the information and attended the capital projects meeting. So we had that meeting to fund the senior van. That's what that was about. That's that.
Thank you, Judy. Do you have any questions? Not, I look for a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?